Xianxia, a middle-aged Confucian scholar, is sitting in a thatched cottage study without a plaque in the township school. It is not a famous game that has been handed down for thousands of years, nor is it a resumption of the dispute between national players in the chess world. He was about to drop a white piece on the chessboard with a sigh. The Confucian scholar suddenly began to hesitate, where a certain number of pieces had taken root. After he withdrew his hand, the pieces still hovered in the air. More than an inch from the chessboard, Xianxia is still sitting upright. As a contemporary sage in charge of this place, Xianxia is one of the 72 Confucian academies and the former mountain master of Xianxia Academy. Even if he is relegated to this place, Xianxia is still a well-deserved Malay Confucian in the world. In 1 year, withers and thrives once each year. The back and forth of the Spring Festival in the spring and autumn period of the common people in the small town has changed. Several different teachers have changed their looks, and their age is different. Only the uneducated temperament of the scholars is the same, old, harsh, and taciturn. In fact, he is the same person. Not only that, in the vast world outside the town, Mr. Jian, who lives in seclusion, once had a transcendent and noble status and a noble supernatural power of righteousness. At the next moment, Xianxia's Yuan wandered out of the body, like a fairy in snow-white clothes, broke free from the shackles from the body cage, and went to an alley in the town. Xianxia came to the lane in a twinkling of an eye. He first went to see the woman lying near a pool of blood, Jian of Xianxia mountain. His soul wandered and dissipated like a candle in the wind. After Xianxia stopped for a moment, he finally came to them. The old Dragon City leader with high crown and big sleeves is a little backward, stunned, and his handsome face with jade skin looks complex, intertwined with shock. In despair, the boy kept the sharp posture of jumping high and killing forward, and held a piece of sharp porcelain in his left hand. Even at the critical moment between your life and my death, the boy with empty body still had firm eyes and calm face. He didn't look like an ignorant boy born in a small house in a poor lane and growing up in the mountains. Perhaps the only thing left in line with the identity of a teenager is the helplessness hidden in the depths of his eyes. But this helplessness, scholars who have gone out of their study and academy for many years are no stranger. They are like watching a farmer who depends on heaven, squatting on the dry season barren ridge and looking up at the hot sun. In fact, they will not have the mood of tearing their hearts and lungs, but will only be deeply helpless and at a lost as the temporary owner of a world. Xianxia certainly knows the context of the three members of Champion and S family, and even traces back hundreds of years and thousands of years. Even if he has not seen the young ancestors with his own eyes, he can generally deduce and evolve. The reason is very simple. It is like the county master of the county government. He really wants to see the succession of the people under the rule of the people. He only needs to supervise the household registered residents and inquire about the files. After more than 3,000 years of reproduction and development, the town has spread outside the town and its roots are intertwined, because each generation has several amazing figures. Although they can't return home, they can feed their families through secret channels, and finally create the most prosperous for surnames and 10 ethnic groups in the town. Champion and S family also has a long history. Its ancestors also made great achievements and were very rich. However, after 2 ups and downs, it gradually fell silent and declined in Dongbao Pingshu, which has numerous vassal states and a forest of royal dynasties, and gave way to other surnames after thousands of years. Rivers are declining. It comes to the generation of young fathers and the Chen family in the small town, almost in the whole Dongbao Pingshu. It has completely declined, not to mention the Dali dynasty where the town is located, as if it were an official order by the king to not be allowed to leave office for generations, and the family can no longer recover. After Xianxia came here to preside over the operation of the array for more than 60 years, he abided by the forward teacher training of Feng Jianbing and peace, and never changed the fate of the people in the town without his personal likes and dislikes. Otherwise, in the eyes of the scholar who once hated evil, there was too much filth in the high-ranking families in the town and too much poverty in the small families in the poor alleys. However, Xianxia after watching coldly, saw that the big house also had their futility and helplessness, and the small families also had their extreme poverty and ferocity. Over time, Xianxia was like a high statue. He neither enjoyed incense nor accepted human feelings. He just sat around and ignored the world. Xianxia was slightly surprised. He stepped forward, looked intently, and nodded gently. It turned out that the poor boy with great momentum seemed to have a chance to kill Xianxia. In fact, according to the current posture, the boy just hit Xianxia's neck with his wrist, which was much better than Xianxia's, and Xianxia should have been hit hard. The whole man fell sideways to the wall, and then was pinched by the young man's neck with one hand and the porcelain piece against his abdomen with the other hand. Xianxia wondered why the young man didn't hurt the killer this time. The good opportunity was fleeting, and there were endless future troubles. Xianxia is a mellow Confucian who abides by etiquette, but will not stick to dogma. He is not a pedantic and sour Confucian who will only shake his head and drop his bookcase. He can be more familiar with Xianxia and his companions, regardless of their aptitude or temperament. Even in today's alley, he is threatened by a teenager to give up revenge temporarily. But this will definitely be the only humiliation that young people can see in their life. It's not too much to go up the outline to the devil's heart. It's Xianxia himself who will have to haggle with the teenager at that time. It's the old Dragon City, the Lord of the South China Sea. Xianxia came here to obstruct the continuous killing of teenagers. He has a certain selfishness and is more for justice. Today, the town is like a cracked porcelain, which will burst and explode sooner or later. Xianxia must delay this unstoppable process and try to arrange a retreat for more people. It's best to hand it to the blacksmith master ruin safely. After the last time, everyone can be happy. The people on the mountain have the opportunity, and the people down the mountain have the stability. You should know the consistency of the vast majority of the former. When roads collapse, road and no alternate, opportunities arise everywhere, and longevity can be expected. What is the death or life of millions of Molayans at the foot of mountains? The heavenly family of the secular dynasty is ruthless, which is not worth mentioning compared with the selflessness of the road respected by many monks. Xianxia thought for a moment and quietly disappeared. Heaven and earth moved smoothly before the end. Quietly broken, the young man's wrist finally hit Xianxia's neck heavily. The latter's head shook and fell to the wall of the alley. He was knocked 7 meat and 8 vegetables by the huge force. After landing, the young man quickly approached close to his body and hit Xianxia's abdomen with an elbow. Xianxia did not stand up straight with his back against the wall. The boy elbowed him and almost spit out bitter water. His body instinctively bent. The young man grabbed Xianxia's neck with one hand and the porcelain piece against the high-crowned child's abdomen with the other hand. It's hard for Xianxia to imagine why the strength of the 5 fingers is so huge, especially the sharpness and coldness of the porcelain in the abdomen, which makes the old mayor of Longcheng feel the approaching of death again. The gap between the line is the gap between yin and yang. Of course, Xianxia would not know that a young child who needs to go all over the mountain to find herbs at a young age, because the infinite potential burst out by a stronger obsession than his own survival is amazing. When the young man accidentally ate herbs and was rolling in the alley with colic, that kind of obsession could even make a child who should have studied in a rural school think that he would climb home and put the bamboo basket of life-saving herbs home. After that, there was nothing to do, such as cutting firewood, burning charcoal, firing porcelain, drawing blank, digging mud, tasting soil, etc. There was no need to test the youth's physical strength and endurance. Outside the town, Xianxia can crush 100 or 1,000 teenagers wantonly with a little Xian skill. But he chose to face life and death in the town. It was really good luck that he kicked the iron plate at the end. Xianxia was stunned by the double blow of pain and shame. His face was ferocious and said, "If you kill me, you will die. If you don't kill me, you will die. Little bastard, you are dead." Chen Ping'an looked up slightly, stared at the man with a crazy look on his face, and said, "You know, I don't want to kill you. I have no grievance with you. I fought back only when you want to harm me. Fu Nanhua smiled grimly and said, "Little bastard, do you deserve to reason with me?" He tried to accentuate his voice. "Do you deserve it?" Chen Ping'an was silent for a moment and asked, "Do you have to kill me?" When Fu Nanhua saw the dark boy's eyes, he suddenly calmed down. Fu Nanhua, who was strangled by his neck, turned red and soon turned blue again. In fact, the strength of the young Five Fingers did not increase, but it was enough to suffocate a young man to death. Fu Nanhua said, "Do you believe me when I say I won't kill you?" He struggled violently, but the boy almost added gravity at the same time, which made Fu Nanhua's arm droop. Chen Ping'an shook his head. Fu Nanhua became more and more dizzy. Although he wanted to smash the bastard's head with a slap in his heart, he still tried to be nice on the surface and added, "What if I swear to God? People like us can swear casually." Fu Nanhua played a trick. The great wish of the Buddha's family and the oath with the monk really have great binding force. However, it is obvious that Fu Nanhua only told half the truth. Even if he swore, he would only swear in his mouth. It is not a heavy oath of no words, but it is tantamount to carving the hard wall of the pilgrim. Therefore, whether he abides by it afterwards depends only on his mood. Moreover, the hard oath of a man of practice is not an unbroken law, but the price. In general, the price has an absolute relationship with the level of monk's realm and the weight of oath content. Unexpectedly, the straw sandal boy shook his head. Fu Nanhua, who was more and more difficult to breathe, had lost his spirit of bargaining and was in a trance for no reason. Dying, just like Jian. Or did he die in the hands of a little bitch? So when the bad news returns to Laolong City, will it become a joke in the whole city? He didn't even have a chance to trigger the secret mechanism of the jade belt around his waist. The white jade belt around his waist was actually a remnant of the spirit of the land Zhao. Yes, a heavenly voice sounded in their ears. For Fu Nanhua, it was the sound of nature. But he just fainted. He was not sure whether it was his own illusion. Chen Ping'an turned his head in amazement. As a result, I saw a bright and ethereal Mr. Che. The latter smiled and said nothing. Chen Ping'an's eyes returned to tenacity, and the 5 fingers of his right hand never loosened. Che Jingchen was neither angry that he was kind enough to be regarded as a donkey's liver and lungs, nor pleased that he seemed to see a pair of materials that could be made. He just waved his sleeve gently towards the straw sandal boy, as if he fished an item into his hand. The Confucian sage spread out his palm and burst into laughter. A massive filth like ink. It turns out that someone's mind planted on the teenager is dim and clearly has long died. Looking up at the young Chen Ping'an again, Che Jingchen regretted and said with emotion, "No wonder Mr. Dao said that those who succeed in the world have only superior talents. Secondly, perseverance is the most important. Chen Ping'an, you taught me another lesson for Mr. Dao Chen." Unfortunately, Che Jingchen has no chance to collect close disciples now. After saying this, the Confucian laughed at himself. Now Che Jingchen's disciples was valuable. A room full of elementary school children, each of whom collects a bundle of repairs. It's only 300 win a year. Some children from poor families are just 3 pieces of bacon. Che Jingchen looked at the young man, who insisted on his own opinion and didn't want to let go, and asked, "In your heart, you actually don't want to kill him. But the problem is that this man seems to kill you anyway. So kill him and save his life for the time being. Tomorrow is tomorrow. Or do you hope to calm things down and make big things smaller? Right?" The boy who often listens to the reading of poems next door blurted out, "Why did you teach me?" "Sing," Che Jingchen said with a smile. "Chen Ping'an, you might as well let go of your right hand first, and then decide whether to walk around with me. I can't take the blame for some things, so I must give you an explanation." Chen Ping'an hesitated for a moment. After loosening the 5 fingers of his right hand, he impressively found that Fu Nanhua had no movement. His eyes, hair and breathing were all still. After Che Jingchen ran the battle array, the town returned to its end. Che Jingchen whispered, "Follow my steps and try not to go beyond 10 steps." The middle-aged Confucian scholar with floating clothes and empty body took the lead to the end of the alley, followed by Chen Ping'an. During this period, he looked down at the palm of his left hand. The flesh and blood were blurred and white burns were visible. But the blood visible to the naked eye was no longer flowing. Che Jingchen walked in front and asked with a smile, Chen Ping'an, do you believe there are immortals, ghosts in this world? Chen Ping'an nodded. Yes, when I was a child, my mother often told some old stories, asking me to believe that good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be rewarded with evil. My mother said this most. So I remember very clearly that there will be water ghosts dragging children in other streams. There is a dark official lord who specializes in hearing cases at night in the broken ancestral hall in the north of the city. She also said that the door guard we posted will actually come back at night to help us protect the house. I didn't really believe these things before, with ... Now, I think they are mostly true. Che Jingchen said softly. Some of what she said are true and some are false. As for the theory that good is rewarded with good and evil is rewarded with evil, it is difficult to come to a conclusion, because the definition of good and evil, ordinary people, emperors, generals, and immortals are different. So their conclusions will be very different. Chen Ping'an hid the porcelain pieces, quickened his pace, walked side by side with the Confucian scholars, looked up and asked, Mr. Che, can I ask a question? Che Jingchen seemed to see through the young man's mind and said calmly, this town is the place where the last real dragon in the world is buried and buried. Countless dragon families in the world think that this place is the most prosperous place and is destined to leave the dragon one day. In fact, for 3,000 years, the occurrence of the dragon has been delayed. But the children born in this town are indeed much better than their peers outside people. There are many famous immortal Taoist couples in Dongbao Pingshu, and their offspring are just like this. Of course, not every child in the town has amazing talent. Che Jingchen smiled and didn't explain the matter in depth. He was probably afraid of hurting the child's heart and changing the topic. Almost all the senior monks who participated in the dragon slaughter disaster were seriously injured. Many people settled here and practiced Mama practice. It can be said that they died calmly. Though there were also Taoist couples who survived by chance, and some formed a good marriage naturally after fighting side by side. After more than 3,000 years of reproduction and survival, the town has its current scale. It is the first place in the territory of Dali dynasty. It was called this township. Later, it was changed to Long Yuan by Saint himself. Later, it avoided the word Yuan of the Dali emperor and modified the ... double quotes. The boy who kept his words in his stomach finally couldn't help it. He quietly interrupted Che Jingchen's words, clenched his hands, full of desire and expectation. Sir, in fact, the question I want to ask is my parents ... what kind of people are they ... double quotes. Che Jingchen was lost in thought. Now that the traveling Taoist has revealed the secret to you, I can also follow his broken mouth and tell you something. In my memory, your father is a simple, honest and gentle man with ordinary talent. He is not worth being taken away from the town. Naturally, he has become a chicken rib in the eyes of some people. He is regarded as a loss-making business. Maybe he is angry. Maybe he is really embarrassed. In short, the porcelain beer outside the town made a move on your father's beaming porcelain. After that, he not only had a bad life, but also made you suffer with your mother. Later, he knew the secret of beaming porcelain. He knew that once it was taken away from the town after being opened to kill, he would become a puppet all his life. He secretly smashed the beaming porcelain that belongs to you. If I remember correctly, it should be a porcelain paperweight. Che Jingchen said in a deep voice. You know, babies born every year in the town have a code number stored in the secret file. There are also special people in the town who will use their unique skills to draw a drop of hot blood and pour it into the live porcelain that will be fired in the future. The live porcelain of girls will be burned for 6 years as soon as it is burned, and that of boys will last for 9 years. What's the talent of children? They're like ordinary kings. The quality of porcelain can only be determined by fate. Got a bid for gambling on porcelain after betting is very large. Although your qualifications are equally mediocre now, you can imagine the anger of the people buying porcelain outside the town when your father resolutely broke the porcelain paperweight. As for your mother, she is a quiet woman. When Che Jingchen said this, he suddenly smiled. When your mother married your father, many people of the same age in the town were very depressed. But to tell the truth, it was difficult for me to tell the details of your father's and mother's life when they were alive. After I came here, I had a lot to do in addition to teaching and learning. The boy, turned his head gently and wiped his face with his hand. The boy probably forgot the bad situation of his left hand, covered his face with blood, and was really reluctant to wipe it with his sleeve. They passed the 12-foot archway. Jian didn't look at him. He opened the skylight and told the young man the truth. When the real dragon fell here, Fusens appeared in person and signed a contract here, stipulating that every 60 years one person would sit here and help take care of the residual chair left by the real dragon after its death. In fact, there was no dispute about whether to cut down the roots at that time. But by telling you these hidden secrets would harm you. In general, people from the three religions of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, plus one strategist is dominated by the four directions. The rest of Dongbao Pingshi's various schools, Dongshen Fudi Xianxia Heovolvi families, and so on all have a certain share and opportunity to share the benefits here. It is ridiculous to say that whether there is a quota for buying porcelain in 100 years has almost become a sign of whether a sect or family is in the first-class position. Chen Pingnan said, I can't understand what Sir said, but I wrote it down. But I'm satisfied to know that my parents are good people today. Che Jingchen smiled. I don't expect you to understand at the moment that it's just a foreshadowing. Otherwise, I simply advise you not to kill Fu Nanhua. The reason why I want you not to kill is not that Che Jingchen hurts his kind and the rabbit dies and the fox mourns. What's more, I don't want him to be grateful to Fu Nanhua and Lao Longcheng. I want some benefits in the future. In fact, it's just the opposite. I'm a Confucian family. As a student, he respected joining the WTO and most resisted the recklessness of people in practice. The two sides had fought openly and secretly for countless years. If Che Jingchen had just gone to the Cliff Academy to study, whether it was Liu Shimao, the Shenzhen of the river, or Fu Nanhua, the young mayor of the old Dragon City, where there was still a chance to live now, I would have been wiped out by a slap. The boy found that Mr. Da Chen at this time, although his voice was still gentle and his walking posture was equally elegant, he gave people the feeling that he was different. Just like old man Yao drank too much and said that the porcelain we burned was for the emperor. Who can compare it? As like us to peace, he said, when he played ashes to ashes. He was different from the old man at that time. Che Jingchen frowned and looked up at the side of the mud bottle lane. It seemed that he was listening to others. Although he didn't show a bored expression, the displeasure in his eyes was not hidden. He finally said coldly, Leave quickly. Chen Ping'an looked blankly. Che Jingchen explained, It's the storyteller, whose real name is Liu Shimao and the Taoist name is Yezhang Shenzhen. In fact, he is a Taoist in the side door. His cultivation is acceptable and his conduct is poor. Most of the gratitude and resentment between Sai Zhenjian and Fu Nanhua against you is caused by him. Finally, he planted a talisman of crooked doors and evil ways in your heart. It's a full-character truth, secretly engraved in your heart with the word one mind to die as a means extremely vicious. Chen Ping'an silently remembered the name Liu Shimao. Che Jingchen sighed and asked, You're not curious. Why don't I do it? Chen Ping'an shook his head. Che Jingchen said to herself, This world is like the old porcelain that has been exposed to the wind and the sun for 3,000 years. You are outsiders and protected by a large array. How to do? Just don't go too far to prevent the porcelain from breaking. But I am the person holding the porcelain. Any action I make will involve the cracks of the porcelain. In fact, no matter what I do, I will only let those lines increase the spread. If only the porcelain is broken, it's enough. But the fate of 5,000 or 6,000 people in this town in this life and the afterlife is in my hands. How can I take it lightly? However, Mr. Che spoke so quietly that Chen Ping'an couldn't hear them clearly. Che Jingchen looked at the boy who wiped his face with his right hand from time to time. They had walked near the iron log well in Xinhua Lane. There was a woman bending over to draw water. Che Jingchen asked, If a stranger falls into the well, if you save someone, you will die. Can you save it? Chen Ping'an thought for a while and asked, I want to know, Can you really save that man? Jian didn't answer the boy's question, but said with a smile, remember, a gentleman doesn't save. The young man was stunned and wondered. Gentleman. Jian hesitated for a moment, squatted down first, straightened the skirt of the straw sandal boy, and then wiped the blood with his hand. In a soft voice, when you meet misfortunes, you have compassion first. But our gentleman is not a pedantic person. He can go to the well to save people, but he will never let himself die. It seems that he is aroused by this problem. The boy asked seriously, Sir, can I live now? If so, how long can I live? Jian thought carefully, slowly stood up and cut the railway. If you are not afraid of the bumpy road ahead and suffer a lot, you will certainly be able to live. The young man immediately smiled brightly and said, I'm not afraid of hardship. Jian thought about this trip. The young man took it calmly and was relieved. Let's go and take you to a place. Although Jian can't help you so far, it's not breaking the rules to let you get through this robbery. In fact, I should have compensated you for an opportunity. The boy is ignorant that they came to the old locust tree. Somehow, there was silence inside and outside the town. Only this old locust seemed to be the only exception. The leaves swayed and swayed after Jian stood still. His face was dignified and bowed out. He looked up and asked, Can Jian ask you for a locust leaf, so that the boy can leave the town safely in the future and avoid the unexpected disaster from the counterattack for at least 3 years? A 1,000-year-old locust tree is silent. Jian asked again. Jian has been here for 59 years. He has worked hard without credit. Can't he ask for an ancestral tree leaf? Besides, the young man is the family name of your town. Why are you so stingy? Old locust still has no response. The silence of the moment is like a silent irony. Jian has great powers, but you are not only one of the world, but also the poor man who presides over the hub of the array. We just don't want to give this incense in vain. What can we do? Jian's face was uncertain. Finally, he sighed and looked down, full of guilt. The boy grinned and comforted. Daoist Lu said that as long as I go to the south of the town and find a blacksmith surnamed Ruin and become his apprentice, I have hope to live. Mr. Dao Jie, without this locust leaf, I believe there is no problem. Jian asked with a smile, the truth. The boy scratched his head and said shyly, false. Jian smiled knowingly. Suddenly, out a piece of fresh and tender locust leaves, falling from the top of the tree crown. The boy just stretched out his palm and the leaves fell on his palm. On the leaves, there was a golden font that flashed away. Jian was a little surprised. A moment later, he said in a deep voice, This word is Yao and Chen Ping'an. Are you willing to repay the Yao family, whether life or death? To tell you the truth, even without this leaf, you may not have no chance of life. I can tell you this clearly, so you should think clearly. The boy asked, Is that Master Yao's Yao character? Jian nodded. Exactly. The boy put his hands together, gently clamped the locust leaf in his palm, raised his head and said loudly, As long as I live one day, as long as it is a person surnamed Yao related to you, as Mr. Dao just said before, even if he falls into a well, even if he saves people, he will die. But I Chen Ping'an will save him. There was silence. Jian said with a smile, Let's go. When he left with the boy, he quietly turned his head and looked at the highest part of the locust tree. Jian was sarcastic. In fact, there are more than one or two locust leaves surnamed Chen. However, in the end, knowing that this place is about to collapse, I would rather find another host. Even if I don't surname Chen, it doesn't matter. I still don't have a fragrant ancestral shade, and I'm willing to take good care of the straw sandal boys in Pipian Lane. Jian turned back, touched the young man's head and jumped. If Song Jixon, Zhao Yao and Gu can make this great wish like you before, maybe it will resonate with the world. The boy smiled and said, I can't control it. I just do my own thing. Jian asked again, Is it true this time? The boy smiled and said, Yes.